secrecy only works for so long and for so many things. There comes a point where if you keep things secret too long, it has a shelf life, and it actually starts working counter to the reason why you kept it classified in the first place.
I'm under the impression that the expiration date for UFO secrecy has been reached. For starters, Luis Elizondo has initiated an Inspector General investigation into how the Department of Defense has handled the UAP issue. And I don't think this kind of action has any historical precedent whatsoever. Now, the Inspector General's office can be likened to internal affairs within a police organization. The people that would investigate whether or not the police personnel are behaving lawfully. He has submitted documentation to the IG office about what, for example, ATIP discovered through their investigations and who he briefed within the United States government during that time. And he is assisted by renowned lawyer Daniel Sheehan. Furthermore, outfits like space.com are writing serious articles on the scientific pursuit of the UFO enigma. And we have very serious documentaries and coverage of this issue coming out, not the least of which is a 5-part series on the UFO enigma that will air on CNN. We have Elizondo currently writing a book that should come out within the next year, 2, 3 years, going over the reality of the UFO issue and how involved the government was in it and things of that nature. We also have people like Jim Semivan, who was an operations officer in the CIA's Directorate of Operations for 25 years, conveying that he believes more people are going to come out of the U.S. government to discuss this issue. Elizondo has stated the same thing. We have the United States Congress that is going to get more classified briefings on UAP. And we have members of Congress that are absolutely angered that they were not informed about this real issue of unidentified aerial phenomena encroaching into highly secure military airspace. And we have calls from more than one member of Congress to have open hearings on the issue. So to me, this amounts to an environment in which it's no longer tenable for elements of the U.S. government that have been read in on this issue and that study this issue and examine this issue to obfuscate on this issue and lie to the American public on this issue. I think those days are not only numbered, but are rapidly coming to an end, which doesn't mean we'll get all the answers. But what I do think it means is that enough scientific forensic evidence will be produced and acknowledgement will be made by entities like the U.S. government to a point where our perspective on this issue will shift and never return to where it was before. And we will collectively understand that indeed there are technological machines in our airspace and in our oceans that are unaccounted for and surpass known technology, and thus very likely do not stem from human civilization.
There are pockets now in the executive branch that are having a real conversation. And that, by the way, will come out.
That's an interesting prediction by Elizondo. It underscores that there is more seriousness and talk of this issue underneath the surface than we're currently aware of, and that we will be made privy of.
I mean, this is now the train has left the station. It's building momentum. And every week new information's I mean, this is not like, hey, think of the Roosevelt, 3 years ago. No, like last week, things are still happening that is getting reported and being assessed and looked at. It hasn't hit the public yet, but I suspect at some point it will. Someone in Congress will talk about it, or maybe someone will ask about it in a press, conference there at the Pentagon.
So Elizondo stated this is not like 3 years ago with the Roosevelt, although I think he might have misspoke if he was referencing the Roosevelt encounters that happened in 2015, represented by the Go Fast and Gimbal video, although it has been reported that there were many more videos or a couple more videos taken during those encounters. But either way, his sentiment is very clear that these incursions are not ancient history. They're happening all the time. They're being reported all the time. There are people within the U.S. government examining these incursions. And he goes even further to say that this may come out via members of Congress starting to broach and discuss it, or during a press conference within the Pentagon, it is asked about. And this has been something that he said, and I've heard it from other sources outside of Elizondo, that these incursions are happening extremely persistently, extremely consistently, very, very brazenly. The U.S. government doesn't know where these objects are coming from. It's spelled out very clearly in the June 2021 UFO report. They said they don't know where they're coming from. They don't even have evidence it's coming from China or Russia. And it appears that some of these machines can perform in ways that are not clear or understandable within our current scientific framework and paradigm. So, as the title of my video goes, I think 2022 could be a huge year for disclosure, not just from progress being made on the government front and on the scientific front through private outfits investigating this enigma, but from the phenomena itself, which seems to be increasing its capacity to come close to warships or to be seen by fighter pilots, almost as if it wants to be seen. Something very strange seems to be going on in this regard. Within the spirit of this video's topic, in the next segment, I'm going to share with you some direct quotes from Lou Elizondo and at least one from Jim Semivan regarding what we may expect in the year 2022 as it pertains to UFOs and transparency on this issue. Elizondo states, so that's one of the things we're doing. I think people can expect in 2022 increased government awareness and involvement, even more than we're seeing now. I think another big moving piece here is the international cooperation. I think at both at the official and unofficial level, I think we can expect to see more and more foreign countries jumping on board and wanting to share the information that they have available with the United States. So I think that's fantastic. There's a lot happening, and I think we're going to see more and more people coming out of the shadows to have this conversation. So I'm very optimistic about 2022. Yeah, there's a couple speed bumps in the way you still got to deal with. It's not easy, but I think we're getting to a point where we have a critical mass. Enough people know the reality of this topic where if you ask somebody, are UFOs real? That's really the wrong question to ask somebody at this point. The real question is, what do we do about it? And how are we going to react when the first contact is officially made? What are we going to do, right? Are we going to run for the hills? Are we going to extend a hand? Or are we going to, aim a rifle? And these are things that we need to talk about. And I think we're going to see increased media involvement in this topic. George Knapp states, well, you came forward and talked about this stuff. He came forward. Elizondo came forward. There's been some bumps and bruises for him and Chris Mellon. Are there more people on the inside who now would be encouraged to come out and talk about it? Jim Semivan responds, yes, I think so. And I think you're going to see that. Matter of fact, I have friends in the intelligence community that have gotten in touch with me and saying that they are now taking an active role and they're petitioning people inside the intelligence community to do more. So in other words, these are young officers who are basically saying, we want to get involved in this. Where do we sign up? So I think the cat is out of the bag. There's no question about it. And to your listeners, I will say just hang on. I think Lou said this a couple of weeks ago. It's going to be a hell of a year this year. Elizondo states, but if you look in just the last 4 years of how far we've come, we really have come a long, long way. And those forces of resistance in the Pentagon every single day are dwindling and dwindling. I got to tell you, I think 2022 is going to be an even better year. We've got so many things planned. I think it's just going to be an absolute knockout year. Elizondo states, at any event, if Congress ever decides to do open hearings, I guess my best advice would be sit down with some popcorn and some sunglasses because you're in for one hell of a show. It's going to be pretty interesting when all the facts and details come out about the validity of the ATIP program. Again, what we found a lot. Anyone that thinks what's going on right now is about Luis Elizondo or Chris Mellon or both are sorely mistaken. Because we are at a juncture right now where what's going on right now as it pertains to scientific institutions, our media, and our government, and their handling of the UFO issue has, quite frankly, far superseded Chris Mellon and Luis Elizondo. And that's just self-evident and not really debatable. I mean, right now, for example, there is an office in the Pentagon that is going to approach this topic in all manner of ways, including looking at exotic materials, looking into incursions into nuclear installations, inquiring to see if there is indeed a back engineering program of recovered craft. We have space.com did an article titled 2022 could be a turning point in the study of UFOs. And in that article, even the idea of some UFOs potentially coming from time travelers is discussed in space.com. And I think some of the skeptical community have fallen into a very illogical trap. They have the rhetoric that this is all just a mind virus, and it was instituted by people like George Knapp and Luis Elizondo and Chris Mellon and Robert Bigelow and Harry Reid, and we're all just dealing with the outcome of their incredible persuasion skills. And this very sad narrative, in my opinion, it's an affront to critical thinking. I don't think it's very plausible, and I scratch my head every time I see someone that I consider intelligent say that they think this is what's going on. And I think it's an expression of desperation, because if you are so committed to the narrative that UFOs are almost certainly nothing burgers, then you have to create these elaborate narratives to explain away why the landscape is changing so radically in various serious arenas of our civilization. And the last thing I want to say in this regards is, has anyone ever considered how insane people like Luis Elizondo would have to be if it truly was what the skeptics claim that it is, or some of them, I should say. I don't want to say all of them, but many of them say this is likely misidentifications or 737 in the distance or a fellow F-18. It's radar glitches. It's enormous amounts of people making mistakes, pilots and radar operators. It's this comedy of errors. It's this perfect storm. If that were to be true, if that were to be accurate, then Elizondo would have to be pretty unintelligent. And you can go, and you can, if you're a skeptic, go ahead and timestamp this and download it and play it in the future in this hypothetical future scenario where you think this is all going to blow up and it's all going to go away and evaporate and we'll go back to normal. Go ahead and do it. I'm keeping it real. I really do believe that. If there's nothing to this and there's no validity to the UFO issue, and it's almost certainly just Chinese drones, right? Conventional drones with conventional technology, and this whole huge explosion surrounding the subject is just a lack of critical thinking skills. If you truly believe that and you think that's correct, and that ends up being correct, then I'm going to just say it. I think Elizondo may be smart in other ways, but when it came to analyzing data in reference to UFOs, he missed the mark in a very serious way. And I have no problem with that. I have no problem with that because I think the common sense, erudite analysis of what's going on is actually that it's likely that there actually is something to UAP. And that they don't represent conventional technology. They represent technology that surpasses conventional technology of unknown origin. I mean, in the UFO report that came out in June of 2021, it said as much. It may have kept the door open to, well, it could be, we need more information and we can't solidify our position yet and that kind of thing. But by and large, it basically said is that. That's coming from the U.S. government. And it aligns with the pilots and the radar operators that were actually there. And it aligns with 70 years of history of people coming forward and saying this is real. And yet there are people, there are lots of people who will solidify their position based upon the prospect and the reality that we have no smoking gun evidence, right? There's security cameras all over the place. People with smartphones. Where's all the smoking gun evidence? It doesn't exist. Therefore, absence of evidence is evidence of absence, is basically the argument they make. And I think that was a giant fail. It was a giant fail because it made too many assumptions about the nature of the phenomenon. We don't know where it comes from. And my hypothesis is that some of it represents non-human intelligence. And if that's the case, then they can do whatever they want. And the universe is 14 billion years old. If there's a civilization that's just 25,000 years ahead of us, well, I mean, they probably have really good artificial intelligence. Maybe they can control people's consciousness. Maybe they have scans when they come into proximity of people and they can see where each person is and what they're doing. And maybe for whatever reason, they don't want to be documented. Maybe the propulsion system makes it difficult to take clear photographs. I don't know. But the idea that because there's no smoking gun evidence, therefore it's highly likely we're just dealing with misidentifications is just dumb. In my opinion. I don't want to give the wrong impression. It's not so much that it's dumb because it's actually a solid argument, right? We have all these cameras everywhere. If there really were UFOs that are of unknown origin with unconventional technology, wouldn't we have documentation considering all the cameras that are everywhere? It's not a bad argument, but it's not such a good argument to where we can feel near certain that UFOs are a nothing burger on that account. That's really what I'm saying. It's the near certainty and the lack of scientific inquiry over all these decades that just cannot be justified when you consider all the other evidence that's out there, in my humble opinion. For the last segment of this video, let's look at a little future coverage that is slated to come out that could have a huge impact. Here is a very brief clip from August of 2021, where James Fox was asked if he's involved with Luis Elizondo in the creation of a new documentary on UAP.
Are you working with Lou and Chris Mellon on any projects going forward?
I'm going to have to do a big no comment on that one.
That's interesting. Good. That's a good one. That's going to get people talking right there. Good for you. Okay.
And here's a recent comment from Luis Elizondo from January of this year in which he discusses a huge and important documentary that he's involved in. Another project I'm working on now, I won't go into a lot of detail. I've partnered with a few people and I'm working on hopefully to be the most definitive documentary ever on this topic. I won't go much more into that, but my hope is that it will be extremely informative and it will be the absolute epitome of this topic that we're talking about right now. And here's a Leslie Kean Facebook post going into the upcoming 5-part CNN series on UAP. Here's what CNN said in its release yesterday about our series. UFOs unspools the secret history behind the American government's decades-long investigation into the existence of unidentified aerial phenomena. From the creators of the hit series Surviving Death, this provocative 5-part series investigates what the government shared with the public versus what went on in the shadows, how citizens investigated cases and pushed back for more transparency, and what the future holds for this mystery, which is now formally under investigation by the U.S. government. UFOs premieres this summer on CNN. I'm looking forward to one of James Fox's upcoming documentaries. It appears to me there's a good chance that it's being worked on with Luis Elizondo. I'm also looking forward to the 5-part series that's going to air on CNN covering UAP. And I do think that's a really big deal. I know Larry King covered UAP on his show, but I think this is different. I think this is a bigger deal because it's a show dedicated to UAP exclusively. I'm looking forward to Elizondo's new book. I'm looking forward to new people coming out of the government, like Elizondo has, to discuss this enigma. And I'm looking forward to all of the classified briefings the Congress is going to get and what they're going to say about it. Obviously, they can't share classified information, but they can talk about UAP in a general way. And I'm looking forward to the unclassified reports that are slated to come out from the U.S. government. I'm looking forward to seeing this escalate further. And there's always the chance I'm wrong. And that's something I probably say more than anybody else in this field. I could be wrong. I'm only giving my opinion. But my best analysis of everything that's transpiring now and has transpired in the past 4 years and has transpired over 70 plus years is that it's very likely some UAP represent unconventional technology of unknown origin. And based upon what people say they've seen and the flight characteristics of this technology, my number one hypothesis is that some of this, at the very minimum, stems from intelligence outside of the human race. Don't forget to subscribe. And if you'd like to support this channel, you can check out my merch shop where I sell t-shirts. You can become a patron, you become a YouTube member. You could even give a one-time donation. All of those possibilities are in the links below. Or you could just slap a like on this bad boy and I will appreciate it so much. Thank you so much for watching. I look forward to seeing you in the next episode. Special thanks to all patrons, YouTube members, those that have bought merch, those that have given me a one-time donation. I couldn't do without you. Thank you so much. See you in the next episode.